Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am here with Mark, who is living a masterful life, and I will let him introduce himself and what he does in a moment. But first of all, I would like to welcome you all. Thank you for being here and remind you to subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, share all those wonderful things. And so before we begin, and before we share what we're going to talk about today, I would like to invite Mark to introduce himself and share what he does and anything that he wants to share.
Thank you, Cynthia. This is my first time doing something like this, so forgive me if I'm not like seem professional in how I do this, but I'm a mindset coach. I call myself a mindset coach. I have multiple businesses, but my passion is really about mindset and spirituality. And so I struggled for a long time to find a name of what to call myself, but mindset seems pretty appropriate because I believe that when you have the right way of thinking internally, that changes your actions and it also changes your being. And that being attracts certain things without you even having to try, you know. And I've gone through certain things in my life that led me here. I went through really bad anxieties, and those bad anxieties was actually a gift to help me to go down this road. And then I've helped people to, to overcome anxieties, to have peace again, to have people manifest different material things and relationships into their life, and even just like crazy things, and myself as well. And to me, it's just really exciting. Like there's nothing more exciting to me than doing this work and learning more and going deeper into this, like the spiritual practices and experiencing like life like magic. Like I love the feeling of like life is magical. I hate the mundane, like 9 to 5, just toiling, living for the weekends. I love the fact that, there's so many amazing things happening on this planet and you could be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of magic, today we're actually going to have a conversation about living a magical life. And so the inspiration for this conversation came up because we were uh, sharing in a mastermind group that we are both participants in, and it's a mastermind group that is hosted by Joseph Rodriguez. And in case anyone is interested in that, I will link his service below. It is a wonderful service. We highly recommend it. So if anyone is interested, go ahead and check it out. And we were, we get together in these meetings and we share. And so I heard Mark sharing, and for me, what he was sharing was just so wonderful, and I felt connected to what he was saying. And then Joseph said, well, you should probably have a conversation and share it with the world. And that is exactly what we're doing today. And
Yeah.
when before getting together today to record, we actually had a little conversation about to get to know each other and to know the things that are exciting to us and the things that we wanted to talk about. And all of a sudden, the subject of living a magical life came up, and we were both like, yes, yes, that is exciting, exciting to both of us. And so we
Yeah.
decided to get together today and record this conversation about living a magical life.
Yes.
And the first thing that I would like to ask you and to talk about is what that means to you. What does living a magical life mean to you?
That means to me, like one of my favorite movies is The Matrix, and that idea of like living in a rat race when I was in college and my dream was to be a network administrator, which is in computers, and it was just something, a goal that came to me because my father was in similar work. And I remember looking and the pay was good and stuff like that. And I was into like electronics. And so I went after that. And between the years in school and then the years out of school trying to get there, it took me, I think like 15 years to get to that dream job. And when I got to the dream job, I hated it. It was not what I wanted. I was in a server room with computers all day with no people. And I'm a people person. I love connecting with people and talking with people. So it kind of made me start to rethink life. And I realized that we were just living for the weekends, you know, like and this was a strong desire for me to get a 9 to 5 job, you know. And when I got the 9 to 5 job, it was all about living on the weekends. And can you hear me still?
Yeah, 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 perfectly.
Okay. Okay, there's a lot of noise, so I was like, maybe I should put this on.
No, it's perfect.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, so it was all about living for the weekends. And me and my wife was talking about that. All we did was work, 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 then do some chores, and then you were tired. So then you went to sleep and maybe watch some TV. And then on the weekends, you were supposed to like enjoy your life. Like this was the time to enjoy your life. But then you still had errands to run a certain day. So you really got like a day and a half, maybe a day to enjoy your life. But then you were also tired from the week. And I was like, this is not the way to live, you know. And when I was at that job, I also was introduced to The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And then that was the first time that I ever had the thought that, you know, my thinking is creating my life somehow, you know, like I was attracting things. And this really excited me because then it was like, well, that means I can have whatever I life I wanted. Because prior to that, I thought that having a different life was just luck. Like you just was lucky to you were lucky in business or you were lucky in like life to be born in a certain family or something like that. And I thought I was very limited as to what I could create in my life, you know. I had this very narrow path and I couldn't stray off too far. And when I read that book, I saw the movie first and I read look, it would like just opened up like this. And I was like, oh my God, I can create whatever I want, you know? And so for me, a magical life is just being able to create whatever you want and then also do it in a way that by the time you get to where you're going, you're not like depleted and feel exhausted and just feel like, you know, like you ruined half of your life to get it. It's more about enjoying the journey. So there's a flow, like you just flow with life and you trust life and you know that life is actually here to help you and is working for you, and then you flow with life and wonderful things happen along the journey, and then the journey, which is to me like 80% of the time, is very enjoyable, and then when you get the goal it's just like the cherry on top. So that's what a magical life is to me.
Mhm. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. So I can share what it is to me. And
Hmm.
so for me, for as long as I can remember, like since when I was a child, I always loved the idea of magic and living a magical life and having magical experiences. It's like I would watch these cartoons and see like these magical beings having magical adventures. It was like, I love this, I love this, I love this.
Hmm.
And my dad has always had kind of um out of the ordinary experiences, and he's always shared those things with me. And
Hmm.
so I always found those things interesting. And I was like, oh, I would like to have those experiences too, right? It's like I would like to, and he was never like he didn't know anything about manifesting or anything at all, but he would just have this strange experiences, and then he would talk to us about it, like me, my brother and sisters. And so I was always fascinated by those experiences. And so growing up, um, I kind of have one experience that was transformational for me for when I was 12. And it was, I don't know if I would call it like a mystical experience, but I remember it was an experience where I felt very deep peace.
Hmm.
And to me, it was very, um, I don't know, like a very different experience, nothing that I had ever felt before. And
Hmm.
so it stayed with me. And so I kept saying, or it kept feeling like, oh yeah, I want a magical life, magical life. And so again, when I was a teenager, I was, interested again in those things that are out of the ordinary. And
Mhm.
so my mom, I don't remember exactly how it came about, but my mom told me, oh, well, would you like to learn something like that? Like something that's out of the ordinary. And I was like, sure, okay, then I will teach you something. And I was like, what? She had never said anything about weird stuff before, but she was like, okay, I will teach you. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And so she started writing something on a paper, on a piece of paper, and she gave it to me. And she kind of said, okay, when you're ready, you can read this. And I was like excited, right? And I was like, okay, okay, okay. And so I went to talk to my dad. They were separated at this time, so he didn't know the conversation that I had with my mom. So I went to tell him, like, look, mom is going to share something with me. And it's so interesting because his answer was, okay, are you sure you want to learn this?
Mhm.
And I was surprised because he had always had weird experiences and like he was okay with it. It was not anything that he would consider to be negative. But he
Yeah.
said, "Are you sure you want to learn this?" And I asked him why. Well, because now you're either gonna have a normal life or you won't. And it's your choice. And so it I was just really, really surprised. And I started considering all the stories about people having these magical experiences, the stories that I knew, right, as a child, as a young teenager,
Mhm.
and all the stories about these beings or these people, like superheroes and all those types of things. And they all
Mhm.
had one thing in common, which was at some point they all missed their normal lives. And so when I started thinking, what kind of life do I want to experience at that point in my life, I threw the paper away and never read what it
Mhm.
said.
Wow.
And never regretted it. And
Mhm.
and I feel like that that moment for me felt like mm, wanted to I wanted to enjoy the normal life
Mhm.
as a teenager and as a young woman. Like I wanted to experience that and acknowledge the magic in the everyday life. Even though
Mhm.
even though what I consider magic back then was extraordinary, like experiences that we didn't have or that I didn't have every day.
Mhm.
That moment when I had that choice, I realized, okay, there is something here that I want to acknowledge and that I want to value and that I want to experience before I go to anything more than that, right? And
Yeah.
it was just so interesting to me that I made that decision at that age. And then when I was in my early 20s, I so up until that point, my dad had never had any mentors, like spiritual mentors. And then when I was that age, he started to have a mentor. And I never met him in person, but my dad would tell me stories about him. And so this person was my dad's mentor for a year. And then this mentor passed away. And
Mhm.
so I never met him in person, but my dad shared two stories that I will never forget. The first one was that they were visiting some people. And they were, I don't know, it was the afternoon, they were visiting some people, talking, and then there was a woman there with a child. And my dad's mentor asked her, why is your child not playing with the other kids outside? And this woman said, because one of his legs is way shorter than the other. So he cannot run, he cannot really play safely. So he just stays inside. And my dad's mentor said, okay, okay. And then a little, like some moments later, this guy said to the woman, like, hey, look outside, look out the window. and the child was playing with the other kids, running
Hmm.
around, and both his legs were the same length.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know. And so for me, that was the first, and this was about 15 years ago.
Hmm.
And so that was the very first um time that I heard about what now I called and many people called out of thin air manifesting, which is
Yeah.
something that changes without any human intervention, right? It just something shows up or disappears without any human intervention. And so that was the very
Hmm.
first time that I came into contact with a story like that. And my dad saw, like my dad was there and he was telling me all about. Um, so that was the very first time that I came into contact with a story like that. But then
Hmm.
the second story that my dad told me, I feel is the one that marked me the most. So the second thing that happened was that this mentor was teaching my dad how to astral project.
Hmm.
And they were at church. That's where they met. And they were at mess. So this guy was in the front row, the mentor was in the front row, and my dad was all the way in the back. And so my dad was not really paying attention. He was thinking about a place that he really loves, that he lives in Argentina. And so his home at that time was in Buenos Aires, but there was this other place that he really loved and that he dreamed to live in. And so he was thinking about it. And all of a sudden, apparently, he astral projected there.
Wow.
Yeah. And this meant so he went there and visited all the places that he loved, saw the people that he loved because he has friends there. Had like um so he went to see one of his friends and the people could not perceive him, but their dog came to him and started barking at him. So he visited these people, saw this dog, visited all these places that he loved, and then he came back and kind of
Hmm.
opened his eyes. And when he did, his mentor was standing in front of him.
Hmm.
And so they had this conversation. So my dad asked him, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing standing in front of me? And the mentor said, I was over there and I felt someone leave in spirit. So that is how they didn't call it astral project.
Yeah.
They called it getting out in spirit. And so I
Yeah.
have felt someone leave in spirit, but I didn't know who it was. So I left in spirit and then I saw it was you. And so I went with you. I followed you.
Hmm.
And then I just wanted to make sure because it was one of the first times, or maybe even the very first time that he was doing it, my dad. So I wanted to go with you, make sure everything was fine. You didn't become afraid of anything. And then when I saw that you came back safely, um, then that's it. I just wanted to make sure that you were okay. And so my dad was like, well, okay, then if you came with me, tell me where did I go? And then
Hmm.
this mentor told him, oh, you went here and you went here and you went to visit this friend and then you went up the mountain over there, right? And it was exactly all the places that my dad had visited.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, that story, it's it really changed me. And it was not
Hmm.
even because of what this guy was able to do,
Hmm.
but the fact that someone could say those words that matter of factly. It was just, yeah, I sensed that someone went out in spirit, so I went out in spirit, and so it was you, and then I went with you, and everything was fine, so I came back.
Yeah.
I mean, just someone that could say that matter of factly, that is just it. It did something to me. It clicked, and I was like, oh yeah, that is it. That is it. When I think of a magical life now,
Hmm.
that is my definition of it. It's being able to have these experiences that most of us would consider impossible or
Hmm.
like completely extraordinary,
Yeah.
and having them be so matter of factly. Like,
Yeah.
uh, it's not even, I don't know, it's not even the most important part of the conversation. It's not the highlight of anything. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey with what I consider a magical life. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. You definitely, it's definitely, it feels more magical. Like I've tried astral travel, and I remember there's a book called Journeys Out of Body. Uh, and I can't remember the author's name, but he was a wealthy guy who started astral traveling, and he didn't know what was happening at first before. When you fall asleep in the middle of the day and sometimes you wake up and you feel like something's holding you down. Yeah. So that's how his story began. And I can't remember exactly because it was years ago that I learned this story, but it would happen to me. And so I was like, oh, and I was like, I guess maybe I'm trying to astral travel. He said, what's happening is not nothing's holding you down, but your soul is trying to leave your body and you're afraid. You're afraid. And that's why, a lot of times when you have that feeling, you also feel like you can see. Like you think you're dreaming, but you're seeing around the room while this is happening. And you think it's all a dream, but the truth is your soul is trying to get out and you are seeing around the room, right? So this is what he was saying. And so this would happen to me in the daytime a lot. It happens so often that a lot of times I wouldn't even take a nap because I'm like, I don't want that freaky experience. So so now after I learned this, I'm like, I'm ready to have this experience. And so the instructions was when you start to feel that feeling and you realize that you feel that afraid, like something's holding you down, and you can see around the room while you're still sleeping, to relax and let go and trust and allow it to happen. So now I'm waiting for this to happen, and I'm going to sleep in the middle of the day all the time, And then I remember it didn't happen in the way I thought, but I fell asleep and then, that thing happened and I was like, oh, this is it. Like, relax. So I said, okay, relax, trust, you're safe, and I started doing that. And then all of a sudden I just felt like the screeching noise, and like I was going through like a vortex, like this vortex. And then when I got to the other side of the vortex, I was in the same room, but it was different. The room was glowing. It was vivid and illuminating. And there was this movie projected on all the walls around me. And it was Winnie the Pooh, right? And when I was like, what is this? Like, what does this mean? And then when I woke back up, I was like, I don't know if that's astral projection because I didn't feel like I went anywhere. I was in the same room, but the room was so like magnificent, it was just glowing and vivid and just amazing. And what was that movie on the wall? And so I looked it up and I was looking up like what happens when you astral project. And they said that vortex screeching thing happened. So I was like, oh my God, I must have done it, right? I don't know. I didn't go anywhere, but and then I was trying to figure out that, and I realized that was the Winnie the Pooh movie, and I watched that Winnie the Pooh movie that day, and I was looking for what this was about, and in the end, it said there's a saying in that thing, and it says something like you're smarter than you are, you're smarter than you think, you're braver than you know, and you're stronger than you ever imagined, or something like that. And it was when I was going through a really tough time, and so I kept that with me at that time. And to this day, my daughter has that on her wall over her bed. I didn't choose that. Nobody chose that because of my experience. All of a sudden, I don't know where she got it from, but one day I walked into her room and this thing was on the wall and it was the exact same and it's right next to her bed. So I am with you. I For me, a magical life is more about having a magical lifestyle where it just feels like there's ease and flow and abundance because I live so much of struggle and stress and toil. So it's ease, flow, and abundance. But along the journey, I love to experience like magic like that, like travel, actual travel, and dreams, having dreams that I interpret. That like I remember when my wife was pregnant, I had a dream that I was that we were driving the car and there was a whole bunch of puppies around us while we were driving this car, and the puppies were in pods of water. And our puppy wasn't in a pot of water. And so when I woke up and we got the puppy and the puppy was okay, but it wasn't when I woke up and we are going through that day, we realized our water had broke and we went to the hospital. And when we went to the hospital, they told us that our water had broken the day before. So our puppy wasn't in water anymore, you know? And so they were like, it's a good thing you came because that's not a good thing if they stay, like that. But my wife didn't even notice. So for us, it's like those dreams, like interpreting dreams, like the astral travel, even waking up in dreams, which happens when you start to meditate. And I remember one time waking up in a dream, and the dream was so it wasn't a dream because I've woken up in dreams many times because you start to become conscious and you can say, especially if it's a bad dream, you can wake up and be like, oh, this is my dream. I can do whatever I want, And then you switch the whole thing around. But this dream I woke up in, it was almost like I woke up in another dimension. It wasn't a dream. I couldn't change anything. Everything was solid. And it was as real as right here, like I could touch things, And it was magnificent, like gorgeous, like it was a hotel, but it was like the hotel of a king, like the king of kings, like a spiritual king. And I was just walking around touching everything, like, where am I? And what is this? It was so amazing. I don't know what that to this day, I still don't know what that is, but I love these things too.
Yeah, what happened in the dream? So you were touching everything and then?
That's it. I just was walking around and I was experiencing this place. And it was just there. It was solid. It was static. I couldn't change anything. It was almost like I was in a palace, in some kind of palace. And I just was like marveling. I was in the dream, marveling about how I'm in a dream, but it's not really a dream. And how is this like here? And how is this so detailed? And it was just, I never, I never really understood what that was. So I just kind of enjoyed. But experiences we have, sometimes it takes years for us to ever get an answer as to what that is. So,
Mhm.
because that's happened to me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is first of all, what you're saying about being in this dream and feeling like it is exactly like the physical world, right? Because it's a similar situation here, right? It's like, sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
we seem to believe that all of this is so like unchangeable and so real and so,
Mhm.
solid
Mhm.
until we start to realize like, no, actually it's not. So I love that. And then also I've had that experience as well of not understanding or not having the answer to a certain unexplainable thing because that's
Mhm.
exactly so the first experience that I was mentioning when I was around 12, it's still an experience that I still don't understand, right? It's like
Yeah.
I remember feeling uh and also when it happened. So it happened when I was not baptized when I was born, but
Mhm.
as I was growing up, I started to go to church more so because of the I don't know, the friendships with other kids. It was like the community aspect, right? But it
Yeah.
included, going to church and doing this and that, like all the rituals. And I remember that when I was 12, I decided I chose to get baptized. And because I wanted to get confirmed, but I couldn't because I was not baptized. So I did both at the same time. And so I remember that when they put the holy water in your forehead, I
Mhm.
had this sensation of such deep peace, like something left, like a weight that I didn't even know that I was carrying at 12 suddenly disappear. And it was like
Yeah.
the most blissful experience that I've ever had.
Beautiful.
And to me, I'm like, sure. I
Yeah.
mean,
What was that?
what was that? And what does it have to do with being baptized? Like, I
Mhm.
know the story about the original sin and how when we're baptized, it's supposed to be lifted, right? And all of that. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily um like identify with that. but
Hmm.
something happened at that moment that I cannot deny, and it was this deep experience of perfection and bliss that I will never forget. And I that experience I still cannot say what it was or what it meant or anything. Um so yeah, I definitely feel and understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it definitely takes some time. Matter of fact, one of the biggest mysteries that happened to me is actually unfolding right now with me and you and Joseph Rodriguez, a mastermind. Uh, 13 years ago, when I first, this is at the beginning of the spiritual journey. I've only was in it 2 years. I was still like an infant in the game, and I went to meditate and I didn't know how to meditate. And I just sat there like this and closed my eyes. And not even 30 seconds, all of a sudden, this big orange globe just, oof, just opened up down here in my like solar plexus area. I don't know. At this time, I know nothing about chakras. I know nothing about any of that stuff. And it just opens up and I just feel bliss. I'm just overcome with joy. And I'm so overcome with joy, I can't stay in meditation anymore. And it's like, there's get this feeling like, what are you doing? Like, this is the purpose of the meditation. You're here already. Just go. Like live your life. And so I come out the meditation and I hear birds chirping and I see the little speckle of sunlight coming through the window and everything just feels so like precious and beautiful. And I go upstairs and I make some tea and then I just sit down and I just start doodling. I'm drinking tea and doodling. My wife was like, "What's going on with you?" Right? And I doodled this thing of like us being on the beach, and there's like a castle on the beach, like a real castle in the background. And I'm with friends and family, and there's a yacht on the ocean, and it's just a beautiful day. And then at the top, I put something like give love, be love, do lovely things, right? And it said, and then I wrote underneath that, underneath the drawing, like under that um I've given up, I let go of all my dogma, all my practice, all my spiritual things, and something like I just follow my joy and bliss. And that was a mystery. I knew something special happened. I had no idea what happened, and I kept that drawing in my book, right? And that whole thing I wrote down. And I also put coach myself at the top. That was the top, coach myself, and I put the date and everything. And then maybe a year or two later, I learned about chakras because this whole time, from the time that I left, because my spiritual journey left when I left my dream job. I quit. My son was on the way. I had no job. And I was like, God, I'm going to trust you. Let's see what happens. I'm like, let's see what happens if I trust God for a year. Is my whole life going to fall apart or is some wonderful things going to happen? And 16 years later, I'm still doing it. So I guess my whole life didn't fall apart. But, um, so maybe a couple years later, I learned about chakras and I started learning about chakras and I realized that the sacral chakra is the joy center, and that's orange. So I was like, oh my God, that's what opened that chakra opened up. And throughout this whole journey, it's like I'm in a spiritual boot camp. I even had a dream one time that I was going to an old job because this is when I was trusting God and I was just going the flow. I wasn't doing anything I felt like I was supposed to, only things I was inspired. And I had a dream and I was with some former employees and I was going to meet an old boss and the old boss was giving everybody jobs and I needed money at that time. And I was like, so are you gonna give me a job? He's like, no, you work for God. And I was like, I work for God. He's like, yes, you work for God. And then he told me, go check, I think it was Hebrews 24 or something. I can't remember exactly. I have it written down. And he gave me a Bible verse. Now, I am not versed in the Bible at all. Like I grew up in a Christian family that read me Bible stories, but I never took upon myself to read the Bible. So I was like, does this even exist? And when I went and looked up that it actually did exist and it talked about exactly what it was telling me at that moment to do, about, trusting God and God will come. Don't worry, things is going to work itself out, basically. And so I've always been on this journey. It's like different things from astral projection to chakras to remote viewing to intuitive work to past life regression. So it's like just like a spiritual boot camp that's going on in my life. And so 7 years later, I was interpreting dreams. and I had a dream where the dream explained to me what happened that day, all the way back then. It didn't say directly, but it was teaching me something. And it talked about the Palladians or something like that, which I have no clue who those are, but I looked that up too. And then when I looked it up, it was telling me that the way that the dream was telling me about was to live in a flow-based way, what we're doing in Joseph Rodriguez, right? And it was called a Wu Wei, right? Which is
Yes.
yeah. And so I looked that up and I was going through that for a while. And that was 7 years ago. And just now I might live in that. So sometimes things take a long time for it to, well, maybe long to us, but maybe short in the grand scheme of things. But it takes a long time for me to really understand and live in this flow-based way. Because even when I was manifesting, which I think a lot of us do, I'm trying to help out the manifestation. You're not supposed to help it out, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yes,
it's scary.
yes.
The more you surrender, the more scary it gets because you've been taught that you live in a harsh world, in a scary world, and nothing's given to you, and you got to fight for everything. And this has been drilled into you from a child. So the more you let go, the more scary it seems. It's like, oh my God, like, am I just going to like, is my whole life going to implode if I just don't do anything, you know? And the more I go into do nothing and I trust and do nothing, the more God shows up. And the more God shows up, the more I do nothing, you know? And the thing is that it's so nuanced that you start to realize that doing nothing is not really doing nothing. Doing nothing is doing nothing of yourself. It's being a channel, being a tool and allowing that passion, that inspiration, that love to flow and stop doing things out of fear or not enough or I need it now, lack, and just wait and then when you start doing that, you start to realize, oh my God, this is love. This is me loving myself. This is nurturing, from you don't realize how much things you're doing out of fear-based lack, and when you start and you surrender and that fear is coming, it's like trying to push you, like, that's anxiety, like you better do something, and you're just like, you know what? I just don't want to do anything today. And I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna try that. And you know what happens? For me, at least, I always get inspired to do something eventually. And it's always something highly productive and beautiful. And it's not anything that was like force and struggle and lag. It's always beautiful. And the more you do it, the dots start to connect in a way you could have never seen, you know, looking forward, but you only can see in reverse. And it's beautiful. And that's the magic that I love.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what wonderful share. That was absolutely perfect. Thank you so much. And now that you're mentioning doing nothing, first of all, what courage to
Yeah.
actually decide to
Yeah.
do that and go all in, right?
Yeah.
To go all
Yeah.
in. That
Yeah.
takes courage. So
Yeah.
amazing. That is such an inspiring story. And I totally understand that fear that you're talking about, because, you know, our mind always wants to figure things out and know, like, okay, what are the next 10 steps that are going to perfectly lead us to this goal that we have, right?
Yes.
It's like the safety comes from there, from having or perceive that we have control.
Yeah.
And and then it's letting go of that,
Mhm.
and this notion of doing nothing. I um Sometimes it can be understood as literally sitting on your couch and not moving and having
Mhm.
everything fall in your lap,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that definitely can happen.
Yes.
uh but it doesn't mean that you are never going to do anything,
Yeah.
but just that you're not going to try to force
Mhm.
things.
Yes.
I see the do nothing, the way that I understanding is accepting the perfection and the ease
Mhm.
that is already here.
Yeah.
And then by accepting that, you just release the trying to control and the fear and the need to take action,
Mhm. Mhm.
from this perceived lack and the need to take action to make sure and to like to get this sense of safety from that action that you think is going to lead you to whatever goal you're
Yeah.
trying to obtain.
Yeah.
And then releasing that does not mean that we're not going to do anything, but whatever we're going to do is going to be led by the perfection that we already are.
Yes.
We don't really need to figure anything out. We
Yeah.
just need to allow it to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just be.
Yeah.
Yes, it kind of all hit me just one day. It was just like, wow, like it actually brought me to tears because I was like, I was walking and I'm doing this thing on TikTok. It was 30-day money manifestation mastery, and for myself, and I was allowing people to join me, and I was walking and I was thinking about how do I manifest this large sum of money that I was thinking. And I remember the intuitive message came to me and it said, you don't know how to do it. Your brain only works with what you've already done and what you've learned. So if you have never done something, how are you going to figure it out? You can't, you know, it's like looking in a container that you know what you put in there and you're looking for something you never put in there. Like it's not going to be in there, right? And so, so it's like, but I know how to do it because I put the desire in you. And Joseph he calls desires prophecies. And I like that. And I adopted that. It's like
Mhm.
I put that desire, that prophecy was put in you through me. And if you listen to me, I'll take you there. I'm going to take you to it and it to you. But you have to surrender and you have to trust and you have to allow, and that's where the scary part is with the ego to surrender and trust and allow. And the more you surrender, allow, and trust, the more magical I believe life gets. It's just like, it's so like, it's just beautiful. I remember a lesson that I got, was, it's kind of like if somebody says, you need to collect butterflies and they get a butterfly catcher and they start going around town and looking for butterflies and trying to catch butterflies. It's so much effort, so much work, so much fear if there's a deadline and things like that. But the message I gave, what was given to me was like, and it was in regards to money, but it used a butterfly. It said the best way to catch a butterfly is to create a butterfly garden, right? And so I went out. I remember my wife was like, because I came back with $150 worth of things that butterflies love. And I made a garden on our patio. And she's like, what is happening right now? She's like, you never know what's going to happen with you in a day. And I just went out and researched what do butterflies love. And I made this butterfly garden. And then I had to wait. So that's how it works. You get inspired when you do nothing. It's not that you're really doing nothing. You allow yourself to do nothing. And then all of a sudden you'll know what to do when it's time to do it. And I got up and I made the butterfly garden while this person be out there stressing trying to catch these butterflies and find a spot for the butterflies. I just created my own garden. And then they came to me within a few weeks or a couple of months. All of a sudden we see one like the eggs start to be laid and the larvae, and then you see the caterpillar. And then my kids, it was such a beautiful thing. The kids always got to see the butterflies thing. And then another time there was 15 there, and then we have 15 butterflies hatching all at one time. And it was so beautiful. And it was because I listened to that little like intuitive voice, that knowing in me, instead of trying to stress myself. And that butterfly garden was the beginning of where I am right now. To this way of flow-based living, this what I used to call reconnecting and trusting, you know, and it all started with that butterfly garden because it was showing me like when you change what's going on in your environment, everything starts to come to you, you know, and that's the magic of life, And you don't have to go out there and try and do this and try. Just change you, reconnect, connect with the highest energy you can, and allow everything else to come to you and you things to flow out of you.
Mm. Wow, so beautiful.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Um, you know, uh, again, this concept of doing nothing and what I mentioned before, that you can be sitting down and then have things fall in your lap. And I mentioned before the out of thin air manifestations. That those experiences, I started to have those experiences about 3 years ago because I received a notification, like a reminder on my phone, like, oh, this happened 3 years ago, like a memory from 3 years ago. And it was when I took a picture of something, like one of the very first out of thin air manifestations that I ever experienced,
Mm.
that I had to take a picture and keep it with me. And I
Oh, you should
actually,
share that here.
yeah, yeah, I
Yeah, you should
will.
edit that in.
Yeah. So, uh, about 3 years ago, I started to learn about out of thin air manifestations and reading about mostly out of thin air physical changes that I would find success stories like on Facebook or on Reddit. Like I remember I would read them, so it was not on YouTube. And I would read these like magical stories, and already learning about manifesting for me was again stepping into this new kind of level of a magical
Mm.
life, right? Because I didn't know anything about it. Um, and then learning about out of thin air manifestations, out of thin air physical changes, it reminded me of this mentor of my dad. It's like, oh, so that's what it was, right? It
Yeah.
kind of things started to make sense.
Mm.
And so I started learning more about it and kind of looking for people talking about it back in the day. And then I started to experience them myself. And I remember the first one was a roll of toilet paper. And that always makes me laugh because it's such a, I don't know, it's such a funny thing. And so that was the very first one. I'm leaving my home in the morning and I make a note like, oh, I need to buy toilet paper. And then I come back in the evening and I realize like, oh my God, I forgot. I didn't buy any toilet paper. And then I go and I see that the place where I stored the toilet paper, there was one roll that wasn't there the morning when I left. And so at that time, I was all about like, oh, out of thin air, out of thin air. Like I was really interested in the subject. And so I was like, oh yeah, it happened. And so a week later, I'm buying some stuff. I'm going grocery shopping and to this big supermarket.
Mhm.
And so I'm buying my things. And then the last thing that I wanted to buy was ice cream. And so I'm going to buy the ice cream. And I remember that I wanted to buy some cream to make a sauce. And the cream was all like it was on the opposite side of the supermarket. So I say, okay, I'm gonna grab the ice cream last, so let me first go get that cream. And I go to the cream aisle and I see that the brand that I wanted and the specific product from that brand that I wanted was sold out. There was nothing left. So I was like, oh, okay. And so I go back to the ice cream. I walk all the way down to the other side of the supermarket and I'm choosing my ice cream and it was in those freezers that you have to sleeve the door like this, not the ones that you open, but you just had to
Yeah.
sleeve it down. And so I open it up, I reach down to grab the ice cream and I just feel so my face was at the same level as the door. And so I feel something shift next to my face. And so I look up and there is this bottle of cream standing in front of my face, which
Mhm.
was the exact brand and the exact product from that brand that I wanted.
Yeah.
And that, like I actually grabbed it, I took a picture because I was just blown away. And I don't know why exactly it was even like more surprising than the toilet paper. I guess that
Yeah.
because it was so specific. Like it was not like any general thing, right?
Yeah.
Like an unbranded roll of toilet paper. No, it was the specific thing that I wanted, the specific brand, the specific product, the specific size, like everything. and it just showed up in front of my face. And that again, there was one of those moments that really changes you, or it just did something to me. And not only the fact that something can just show up and be absolutely perfect, but again, the implications that it has,
Yeah.
that even though we may not see something with our physical eyes, doesn't mean that it's not here already.
Mhm.
And so that started happening, and after that, and it keeps happening. And so after that, another one that happened was that I was imagining having a cuddly cat, because all of a sudden I just felt like, oh, I want a cuddly cat. And I imagined cuddling a cat just because I was not trying to manifest a cat.
Yeah.
And so 2 days later, 2 or 3 days later, I used to live on a third floor, and without an elevator. And so I'm going up the stairs, and I'm almost reaching my door, and there's this cat right on the staircase. And she wanted me to pick her up. And so, a cat that is so loving and just trusting and asking to be picked up, I thought, okay, must be one of my neighbors. So I started knocking on people's doors, asking like, hey, your cat escaped or something. And they were like, no, that's not my cat. No, that's not my cat. No, that's not my cat. And so I took her to the vet to see if she had like a
Chip.
chip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she didn't have any, so it was no one's cat, and I adopted her. But then again,
You know what TikTok calls that?
no.
It calls it the cat distribution system.
Yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah, 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 yeah. And it was so funny because even when I named her, when I gave her name, I was like asking her, okay, so what's your name, right? Is it this? And she was just looking somewhere out the window, and she was just like, didn't react. But is this your name? And she still looked out the window. And then I named her Mili. Mili, which in Spanish is short for miracle.
Mm.
And so, are you Mili? And she was like, meow. And she looked at me and she was like, you are talking to me now, right?
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
That's so cool.
Oh my God. And it was so, so funny. And then these types of experiences happen, and it's again, like snippets of this magical life, right? And
Mm.
when they keep happening more and more, they start to feel um I like to say that they feel familiar, not necessarily normal,
Mhm.
because they still feel extraordinary, but they start to feel familiar.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I I didn't like I would only talk about it to the people that I trusted the most, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily talk to the world about it, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like I know these specific people in my life. I can tell them, and it's gonna be kind of a normal conversation. Obviously exciting, right? Super exciting.
Yeah.
But it's kind of uh it's gonna still feel like a normal conversation. Um, and now I I feel like it becomes more and more familiar.
Mhm.
And I am starting to feel that sensation, right? Of someone saying this that matter of factly. Remember?
Yeah.
Like talking about these experiences that matter of factly.
Yes.
And I am so excited because I know that just things that I might even still consider to be impossible a few months ago, now I see people having these experiences or sharing these experiences with me. And I know that eventually I am also going to have even more weird or extraordinary experiences, to the point that I'm just going to keep talking about and it's going to be so much fun. Like saying the most outrageous things, like they're just a matter of fact, you know, they're nothing.
Yeah. No, I think that, see, to me, and that's I think the biggest thing of like having magical life is joy. That's all it is at the end of the day. You know, anytime we're trying to manifest anything, I always explain to my clients, you know, something that I learned myself is that, you know, you only want it because how you think it's going to make you feel. That's the only reason. You know, maybe it's going to make you feel relief or freedom or peace or joy or loved or whatever. But that's the only thing. And I'll have them imagine the thing that they want so much that I was like, imagine having it and you're the same person you are right now, having the same feelings. And that always kills it right there. They're like, no, I don't want that. That's like exactly. It's not the thing you want. It's how you think the thing is going to make you feel, you know? And that's that magical life that, you know, you're living in that feeling already. You're living in that flow, that joy, that bliss, that, you know, inspiration, that, you know, spontaneity. Like anything can happen anytime. Any kind of beautiful things can happen anytime. And so, and this is why, like, I wanted to do the thing here because to me, nature, especially the beach and trees and things like that, to me, that is like it just feels like the magic of life, you know? It's so magical. A tree is so magical, like especially fruit trees. Like we can make a pants tree if we wanted to. We can make a tree that created pants, like made jeans, you know, or a t-shirt or anything like that. But nature is creating these complicated things from this little seed and if you cut that seed open, you don't see any raw materials in there, you know, to create an apple tree and to create apples or coconuts. Like, how is this? It's magic, you know? It's really magic, but we just get so used to the magic in front of us all the time that we just think that, you know, we don't even think of it as magic anymore. But when you have a kid, a new kid, you can't walk 2 feet without the kid asking a million questions and stopping every time because they see the magic
Yeah.
immediately. It's all magic to them, you know. Daddy, what's that? Daddy, what's that? Daddy, how'd that happen? Like it's like overwhelming to them. They're like, oh my God, this place is incredible, you know? And I think we all need to return to that, you know, and to really feel that bliss and that joy in the miracles of each and every moment because we definitely live in like a miracle every single day.
Mm. Oh my God,
Mhm.
I love that so much. And two things. First of all, you reminded me of a child that I know that I've known for years. She's the daughter of some friends, and I always spent a lot of time with her. I would take her to the park and stuff, and I remember that she would stop to pick up beautiful rocks, and she would
Yeah,
put them in her oh my God, what's the word? In her pocket. And that was her treasure. And I
yeah,
always found that so beautiful that
yeah,
that was her treasure. And then she would
yeah.
pick up all these different rocks and put them in
Hmm.
her
Yep.
pocket. And I always love to see that. And yeah, it's so beautiful that finding treasure and finding
Yeah,
magic and recognizing it in
yeah,
our everyday lives. Yeah.
yeah.
And also, um, something that you mentioned about nature and about, you know, already magic being here. It always makes me think about something that is very important to me, that is heaven on earth and
Mm-hmm.
experiencing heaven on earth, but actually recognizing that we never left. We never
Hmm.
left. We've
Hmm.
always been in heaven on earth.
Yeah.
And I, so I like particularly to be committed to that in the
Hmm.
sense of recognizing and remembering and reminding me, reminding myself that perfection is already here and it's already me and it's
Yeah.
already everyone. And so
Hmm.
recognizing and accepting perfection for me and for everyone, and recognizing that we never left heaven on earth, that it's already here, even if we
Hmm.
cannot see it, right? Even
Yeah.
if seemingly we may be experiencing something, or even when it doesn't mean, oh, your image, oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it doesn't mean that we have to be perfect to be there. Doesn't mean that we have to always feel 100% like blissful. It doesn't mean that we have to have the perfect thoughts. Eventually, I feel that it is inevitable that we will.
Mhm.
But even if that is not the current experience that we're having, we're always perfect and we're always in heaven on earth. And to me, I like to remind myself that, and I like to be committed to that for me and for all, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I love that recognition of the
Yeah.
perfection that is already here.
Yeah, and that's the do nothing. That's the surrender. Like it's already here. You don't have to do anything. Just stop. If you can stop trying, if you can stop forcing, if you could stop trying to figure out and just enjoy now, like just
Yeah,
just like sink into now,
yeah,
and trust that, trust that. Just sink back into the flow. It's like we're fighting and we get ourselves out of the flow, we get ourselves out of that heaven on earth. And when we relax, we start sinking back. And the more we can relax and allow and trust, the more we can. And I pray and I ask God, help me to surrender more, help me to trust more, and I say, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to change, and I don't want to be the same person. I want to allow myself to become the person that, I would want my kids to be, and so, and I used to think that there was so much on me, and now I understand that my only job really is to surrender. It's just to keep surrendering deeper and deeper and trusting more and more. And the more I do that, the more magical life gets.
yeah. Oh my God, that was perfect. And I feel like that
Yeah,
was the perfect end for this conversation. If
yeah.
that
I
sounds,
felt that too. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I felt the exact
perfect.
same thing. Yeah,
Oh my God, that was perfect then.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to having this conversation with me. It was blissful and it was perfect. And I know that so many people are going to benefit from it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for coming into my place. This is my place, and I don't I don't bring anybody here. So to bring you and your subscribers, I don't know. I think this place is a special place for me, and it's like a treat, and I'm grateful that it exists, and I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for people like you and that we can connect because honestly, like what I'm living right now, being in this space and being in here with you is what I think is the magic of life. The most important thing out of everything for me has come to me intuitively that it's people. There's people, just having beautiful people in your life, no matter how much money you have, how many goals you have, how perfect your body is. If you have horrible people around you, you'll have a horrible experience. But you can be sick, you can be broke, you can have nothing, and surrounded with beautiful people, and you will have a beautiful experience. So to me, people is like the real wealth of life. So thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone watching. Thank you for joining us in this wonderful conversation. And please, if you have your own definitions of a magical life, your wonderful magical experiences that you would like to share with us, leave those in the comment. And yeah, thank you so much. And we will see you next time. Bye.